Hello everyone, this is China Paradigm, where we, Dashi Consulting, interview seasoned entrepreneurs in China. Hello everyone, I'm Matthieu David, the founder of Dashi Consulting and its podcast China Paradigm. And today I'm with Nicolai Peitersen. You are the co-founder of Wikifactory. And I have to say, it's not easy to understand what you do. And I had a hard time when I went on your website. But here is your introduction. Wikifactory is a social platform for collaborative product development, inspired by the proven collaboration tools from the open source software world. Wikifactory empowers distributed product development teams to get their projects from design to production.
Very clear, right?
It sounds very clear. So it's very interesting actually, because I went on your website. It's active. I mean, people are active on the forum. I saw someone who sent a message like 25 minutes before I went on the website, and you have raised 1.3 million USD according to LinkedIn. And before we prepared the interview, you told me I should add up like 3 or 4 million. So up to 5 million USD you have raised. You have both in the West and in China. So you're based in Chengdu, and you also have offices. And also, we may need more information on it in Madrid and London. At least you have a presence in the West, and people come from all over the world to participate in your community. So thanks for being with us. And my first question is, what is Wikifactory?
I mean, first of all, I guess it's worth to say it's a B2B platform. So in that sense, maybe the communication is not so consumer focused. Was more B2B, and basically it is giving product developers, so product designers, product engineers, everyone involved in product development, the same tools that you have when you develop software. So if you are aware of GitHub, so GitHub is the platform that everyone uses when they develop software. And at GitHub, you have different collaboration tools to be able to collaborate around the code. And the same collaboration tools we are now making possible for product design, for hardware.
So what you are saying is that you are the GitHub for production of hardware, of real products, and not software.
Yep.
Because GitHub is focusing on softwares. It's to share your code, to share your libraries, the code you created.
Exactly. So exactly. That's what we are. So that's one part of what we are, and that's what we released. And now we're working on the second part of the Wikifactory vision, which is, you could call it, to use the same kind of like images, a kind of like a Uber or DD for production. So meaning that, or Airbnb for production. So what we'll be enabling the next phase is that anyone in the world that have what you call a digital fabrication machine, which is a robots, or 3D printers, or CNC machines, or laser cutters. So all this is called digital fabrication. So anyone who have these type of machines can connect directly to our platform and be part of a global distributed production system, which means that on our platform, you'll be able to go from design to production all online as one online process. And that solves a lot of problems and barriers in the production industry, which we see today, which I could go through all these barriers if you want.
Sure, but let me be clear, because a lot of people are using, we are the Google of something, we are the Uber of something. How would you describe that you are the Uber or the Airbnb or the production chain? Because Uber is basically a decentralized provider of service where everyone can provide the service, but you have a central point where you look for this service. So the central point will be Wikifactory. Everyone wants to produce something and to go through the different steps of production. We'll go to Wikifactory and then find different people to work with them independently of where they are and independently of with the connections you have with them.
Yes. So I mean, we take the case of Uber, right? So you go to Uber as a service, right, to get a car ride of some sort, right? And in this case, you would go to Wikifactory to be able to to produce something. So like every individual who have a car can be part of like a car sharing platform like Uber. Then anyone who have a machine, a production machine, can be part of the Wikifactory distributed system. So if, for example, you sit in Brazil and have a product, and you have an order in China or in Russia, then instead of having to fly over to China and spend a lot of money to try to find, a trusted supplier, build up the relationship to start producing this, you'll be able to sit in Brazil in your living room, right, and connect directly to a machine that will be able to make your product where the demand is. So that's the vision, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically you would participate in deglobalizing this world, making the production more local, but the idea coming from wherever it is.
That's right. So the first part of Wikifactory about the collaborative product development is that we are building up a global community of product developers. So right now we have product developers from more than 130 countries on the platform. We are growing 20% every month, every single month. This community is growing organically. We're not even doing any PR, marketing, and etc. So there's definitely a demand, for being able to do online product development. Now I actually lost the.
Saying that actually to use a big word, you are participating in deglobalization because you are making possible to produce locally when the idea can be globally.
Yeah, so it's a global product development and local production. And then it goes even further. So down the line, once everything has been connected, then you can start to apply machine learning to the system, which means that you will also be very dynamic and in real time be able to find the most optimal path of production. Depending on what are the available materials, available machines right now, where the demand comes from, and etc., then in real time you'll be able to calculate the most optimal path of your supply chain, which means that what we're enabling is flexible supply chains. Right. So today it's very difficult to switch supplier because a lot of the product designers, they just send their product design to a manufacturer, and the manufacturer does all the product production engineering and all the know-how to actually turn the design to a product, and then the production processes lies on the factory floor, right, with the manufacturer, which means that it's very difficult to switch supplier. Whereas now, if you connect directly to the machines and you make available the softwares you need to turn the design to production, then all the data sits on Wikifactory in your all-in-one workspace, which means that the data for how to make this product on this type of machine sits with you, and therefore you can send that same data to the same machine somewhere else.
I see. I understand the idea, but it seems like you are taking into account a lot of parameters. When I'm thinking about Uber, Airbnb, basically it's one flat or one car to connect with one user, one person who needs to move to somewhere else. But production is very complicated. There are so many parameters. So how can a platform solve that many parameters? Even with machine learning, you have too many parameters. It's products.
Yes. And that's why we call this an infrastructure project. This is not just an app, right? Or in China, I should say an app. This is an infrastructure project, and we call it the Internet of Production. So when I say infrastructure, is what we are developing is more like an open infrastructure where third-party software can hook in to that infrastructure. So we're not developing all the different softwares you need to go from design to production, but we enable an infrastructure where all those services can hook in to the system. You can call it an app store, right? So when you need a slicer software, there will be a third-party software available on the platform to slice your design. If you need simulation software, then that's available through third-party services on the platform. So we're enabling an infrastructure for any provider to provide the services on our platform.
So what's the difference with a directory? Because I understand if I want to produce something, I could have access to a lot of providers who can produce different parts of my product locally. And what's the difference with a simple directory I could go to that Wikifactory is providing?
Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure what you mean directory, but let's call it a sourcing agent, for example, right? That will then help you source your product, let's say in China. Well, the problem, there are many, right? One is, first of all, it's very costly. So normally you pay those providers or those service providers 30% of the cost to do that. Secondly, as I mentioned before, you're kind of locked in with the manufacturer that you work with, because that knowledge about turning this into an actual product sits with the manufacturer. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to socialize production, right? So any industry that have become digital have been disrupted, and the production industry is becoming increasingly digitized. So the production machines are becoming more and more digitized, because of the robots, right? It's coming out in 3D printers and all that. So that's become more digitized. The product designs are being shared online. So it doesn't sit on your desktop anymore. It's being increasingly shared online. So you're starting to have all the ingredients for disrupting the industry, because everything is digital. And once it's digital, you can disrupt the business model of the industry. And this is why we're trying to become the platform for that. For that change that's happening.
To be more specific and visual, so I have a product I want to develop. Let's say it's as it's actually you have on your platform. I can mention one example on your platform. Okay. I saw was a robot which is a drone, a kind of drone, right? Right. Let's take this example, a drone. Okay. I have the idea of building a drone with a specific material, maybe part of an eco-friendly drone, whatever. And I go on your platform. What's next? So I have a plan. I know how to build it, right? I need to know how to build it, right? Yeah. So well, first you upload your files. So the files that you have for then invite your team onto the or into the project. They would be able to then keep on developing or improving the design. So that would be a version 2, version 3, and etc. Then you might invite your supply chain or your manufacturer into your own one workspace, where the manufacturer would be able to use what we call an issue tracker, right? Where you say, well, this from an engineering point of view, this design, right, it doesn't work because A, B, and C, and here's the next version, right? Taking that into consideration, right? So the collaboration with the entire value chain can then happen in a versioned way on the platform. So once you have gone through, you're happy with the version. So on the platform, you can visualize the design, and you can explode it, so to speak, see all the components that makes up the design. So for each of these components, you can then assign the type of materials that component would need, and then start sourcing components, for the design, or sourcing a manufacturer that can then make those components, and then you can manage that process, on the platform. I understand. So, okay. So you are also a bit of a Trello, where you can manage a project step by step, isn't it? Yes. Yes, okay. Exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I know it's not an easy platform to explain, because it's quite ambitious one. The production industry is a $30 trillion market, right?
It's kind of like the backbone of the real economy. But that's also what makes it exciting, right? That this industry hasn't really been disrupted yet. And of course, it's a big project, and we take it, step by step. By providing, first we've done the collaborative product development part, so the GitHub for product.
I see.
For hardware, and make sure that there's a product market fit, which I believe we have now, because we have this organic, growth of 20% every month.
Wow.
Of product developers doing this. And now we're taking the next step. So over the next 3 months, we're going to release more capabilities, right, to go from the design to production. So we take it in very measured steps, because it is very big project, but we are very focused on creating a service that has actual real use value, right, for our users.
Yeah.
So we involve them a lot in it.
Yeah, it sounds very, very exciting, meaning that you make innovation much easier to go to market. One
right.
thing it's important for us to understand, I believe the listeners and myself, is a business model. Where do you earn money? Who is paying? Where I feel you can have plenty of business model. If it's like GitHub, it's based on the space, or if you want to make it private or public. If you want to make it private, you have to pay, I believe. Or if you need more space, you have to pay. So this is a GitHub model. If it's Trello, or you pay a subscription every month to use a software that if you use with many people in your team, when you want to collaborate with many people. So what's your business model so far?
So our business model is right now very much like the GitHub model, right? So if you are working on open projects or open source hardware, it's free to use. And if you want to do proprietary product development, that most commercial companies would want to do, and they don't want anyone to see what they're developing, you get a private subscription, and then you pay a monthly fee depending on the size of your team for that private repository. So that's the current business model. And then, of course, when we open up for the next feature sets, there will be other business models being rolled out, such as when you start sourcing components through our system, we'll get a small cut of the cost of those components. If you use the paid third-party softwares that we make available on the platform to go from design to production, we also have some sort of cut from those third-party revenues on our platform. But there's many different revenue streams, so we're not too fussed about the revenue streams currently. We're more focused on building the community, getting the right projects, the right people on the platform, and make sure that we have a product market fit. And then, because we know that if that's working and we're growing the way we do, there won't be any lack of different business models, and we are the types that rather want to pilot business models, right? So test business models, see what works, dialogue with our users, what makes sense, and then settle on some down the line.
I see. Is it fair to say that you could be a very good tool for crowdfunding websites? You have a product, and a lot of crowdfunding websites, they actually don't produce at the end of the day. So it gives a feeling when we go to your website, you have the same design as a crowdfunding website, where you see the project, you can click on the project, see the description of the product. Does it make sense?
Well, so what you just went through there is just could say the homepage of the projects, but what you don't see there is the actual collaboration going on, right? On the file level and on the design level. So in that sense, it's much deeper than what you just mentioned here. But it's interesting that you mention it because we are right now discussing one of the, so I can't say which one, but one of the largest crowdfunding platforms in the world, about creating a global partnership.
For people to know, I'm just sorry to cut, but to make sure that people understand what crowdfunding is, because actually it's crowdfunding, not crowdsourcing, crowdfunding websites. So the crowdfunding websites, it's not necessarily that you put equity or you buy shares. It's actually mainly you buy a product in advance before it's products. So the leader is Kickstarter. Then you have Indiegogo, and you have also Jingdong in China, which is doing that. So the challenge they have is that people have ideas. They can be very serious about it, but at the end of the day, they're not able to produce it. And I bought a Kickstarter, 90 USD from a friend of mine. Should be a health product. It never came to life, and I lost my 90 USD. So I believe that actually those platforms really need a partner to support the production.
Exactly. That's very sharp of you to observe this, because that's exactly. So we've been approached by one of these largest crowdfunding platforms, because they, especially when we're talking about crowdfunding for hardware, the failure rate is very, very high, right? So they raise a lot of money, but either they never deliver, like in your friend's case, or they're delayed for maybe 2 years or 3 years, right, before they actually ship the product. So they are very interested in making Wikifactory available for the hardware projects, because then you can actually not only do we help these product developers to make their products, build up their supply chain, and and being able to manufacture on a global scale, but also for the crowdfunding platform. It's kind of like part of a due diligence, right? They can actually see whether there's any activity. They can see, is there a new version of the product design? Are they now working with the manufacturer? Has there been any transactions happened, right? Have been filed, been sent to manufacturers, been started to being made, and etc., right? So they can step in earlier in case there is any problems in some of these projects.
Yeah, and if at some point the team, which is in charge of project, is not able to make it, actually your documentation will be solid enough on the platform to be taken by someone else. So you would solve a lot of the issues.
Exactly.
You talked about the user acquisition. You said that your community is growing by 20% every month. Is it fair to say that it's because it's public and the data, some of the data is public, you have to pay to make it private, that it is an organic growth because of the data which is created online and because people go through the search of Google to find some keyword and then they find a keyword which is published by your community and then you grow by through this way?
Yeah. Definitely. So it's very content driven, our growth. And then we've been it's by design, so to speak. It's part of our strategy to drive our growth through content. So we don't only have, you could say, the projects themselves, and you can tag the projects and etc. But we also have where you can share stories. Right, so you can share stories about what you're working on or your vision with your things and etc. So content is a key factor. The other factor is that we look at what are the most key product development communities out there. So, for example, in the open source community, the leading open source community is the Fab Lab community, which is a global community of fabrication co-working spaces, you can call it. They have I think it's 1,800 around the world.
May I interrupt you? Fab Lab, is it a brand, a company? Is it an association? What is this? Who is behind this?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's so it was started by a professor at MIT, Nick Gershenfeld. And there's a foundation. I think it's just called the Fab Foundation. And then every Fab Lab, so everyone can set up a Fab Lab. There's very, very low requirements. That's just kind of like okay, this is what a Fab Lab is. So if you set such a thing up, then you can call it a Fab Lab. And then there's some common resources. There's a website .io. I think it's called fablab.io, where then the Fab resources available for these Fab Labs, around the world. So it's quite loose organization, it's directed by Nick Gershenfeld through the Fab Foundation, but not in an institutional manner, as it's not like by ownership or direct control, but through providing the resources and the vision, the vision leadership. So that community is very active. They also have an academy where they train people, and we're now the platform for the Fab Lab community, the global Fab Lab community, in regards to product development. So all the Fab Labs around the world signing up to our platform. They start sharing their projects and start collaborating around those projects between the Fab Labs.
I see. You have mentioned one keyword that actually my team insisted on when they prepared the interview. It's 3D printing. But you mentioned only one time. And actually, I thought that it would be a keyword you used 10 times before I could even ask a question about it. So how linked are you to those decentralized production, which is the promise of 3D printing?
Yes. So we call it digital fabrication. That was the word I was using before, because it's not just about 3D printing, but it's also about robotic arms and the CNC machines, laser cutting. So many different production technologies are now becoming digital, which means that you'll be able to communicate with that machine, and therefore it can be part of a decentralized system. And 3D printing is one technology that has become more mature. So 3D printing generally, I don't know how historical you want it now, but 3D printing is quite interesting because it's actually a very old technology. And the reason why there's been an explosion the past, let's say 15 years especially, is because of the expiration of patents. So there were only a few players that had the patents, and so they provided some industrial 3D printers at some point, but it was not very big or popular. And then their patents expired. So it's like a 30-year patent, and that expired, I think it's 20 years ago. I'm not exactly sure when it was. And since then, basically 3D printer providers have grown from maybe 10 to less than 10 players to more than 5,000 players around the world, which means there's been an explosion of innovation in 3D printing in terms of now the speed, the quality, the type of materials you can print, and etc. Right? So it's kind of like 3D printing is like what the old printing was, that like Moore's law, right? That's every 2 years the price halves and the capability doubles, right? This is what's happening in 3D printing.
Yeah, may I be a bit skeptical on 3D printing, because we have been talking about it for 10 years, and my mug, when I buy a mug in the shop, is still not printed by a 3D printer in my area, in my district. When I go to buy, and the mug is pretty simple actually to print, for instance, whatever which is actually could be easy to print. The easiest I see which is printed is a t-shirt with a logo on it. But so far, production 3D printing, I'm not seeing that actually. And we are in 2019, and we have talked about it for 10 years.
Well, I mean, it's because it's gone through. So 5 years ago or 7, 8 years ago, it went through this hype, right? Where people thought that you could just have a 3D print at home, and then you could just print everything, right? And now it's become much more mature. Right? So if you're within the industry, so what you call industrial 3D printers, they're not these desktop 3D printers. They are massive, very big, industrial 3D printers, and they now print many things that you're not aware of, like the casing for your laptop or your mobile phone, is being done by CNC machines with digital fabrication, right? Specialized customized components for the car industry, for space industry, is done by industrial 3D printers. So it's very it's become very specialized and highly specific the 3D production. It's not this about that just anything can be 3D printed and at the quality you want, but it's very specific industries and very specific parts that are now being 3D printed by the large players. So it is becoming a bigger part of the industrial production, but not that everyone just can do it, right? Because it's not just about pressing a button. You also need to do post production, things like this. So it does happen in the industry, but not on a consumer level.
I'd like to go back on the user acquisition part. I am on the website still, and I see that you have a live chat area. How do you convert the visitors, the traffic? Do you hold events? Do you chat with them? Do you push them to send a message? Because it's a pretty intense involvement you're asking them to run into. You're asking them to open an account, to put their data, to work through your platform. So it's a huge step. It's not like buying a product on Amazon. Yeah. It's simple. Buying product on Amazon, but on your platform, it requires trust. It requires to make sure that you are going to stay in business for very long, because I'm going to put my things on it. It requires also to make sure that you are the platform I'm going to work with.
Yes. And well, first of all, as I mentioned right in the beginning, that's why I said this is a B2B platform, right? So it's people that have a real interest, in this, people working with it, either as a hobbyist or professionally in their work. And the second part is that, well, the reason why they are willing to do that is because that the industry of the barriers that I mentioned before. So, for example, when you are a dispersed team, you have team members around the world. It's very difficult to collaborate together, right? Because one is that these 3D design files are very, very heavy. Right. So once you have done the changes and you need to send it to somebody else, send it via email or through Dropbox, right? You need to upload it, take a long time. Then you need to download it and then make changes and do the same process again. So what we're enabling is something much easier, right? You just host it on one platform, and you can visualize, you can see the design on the platform. On Dropbox, you can't see it, right? It's just a file. On ours, you can actually work with the file, right? You can actually see the file, turn it around, explode it, right? And do changes. So it makes it easier. And second is that there are many different design softwares around the world: Autodesk, SolidWorks, and all these different proprietary design softwares. And they don't necessarily speak together, right? So they're different, have different protocols. And that's what we are also enabling on the platform, is that we don't care which design software that you upload. We can visualize any design or engineering type of software on the platform. And then when you convert it to something called STEP, which then can convert to your specific software. So there are these very specific value propositions that makes it worth it, right, for people to use Wikifactory and therefore go through opening an account and and dialoguing with us about it and etc.
It's very interesting.
Some real pains, right? For collaboration.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I feel when people think about innovation, they think about a big innovation, which is good. But the big picture actually is beginning sometimes with a small pain, which is that it's difficult to exchange a file which is big on Dropbox, and then another, and you can actually hook the user by this simple fact that it's easy to upload and share on your platform, and from here you can build
and collaborate.
You can collaborate. You can build the big product, big picture. But you have a trick. You have an enter in the market, and this is very, very interesting to understand. One question,
and then also,
good.
And just to add, and also, I mean, beside these is about having permission controls, right? So what's interesting, you then have the designs there, and you can visualize, collaborate around it. But of course, along your supply chain, you don't want everyone to be able to do all the things, right? So having permission control is also unique compared to be on Dropbox or whatever and share your file to the manufacturer. So you might in Wikifactory you just say, well, this partner can only view but cannot download, right? This partner can make modifications and etc. So that's another key part. But sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, but totally right. It reminds me my accountant in France. I have a company in France, and the accountant software is not making possible to have different type of authority. So basically, I only have to share my password with other people, but I want to manage the accounting with me. So, and they are based on software. It's a software company. Yes, I've not thought about it.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised about it. We are in China paradigm, and we have not said a single time the word China. So why are you based in Chengdu? What are you doing in China? Is it for personal reason? Is it because it's the factory of the world? Why are you in Chengdu?
Well, so there's two parts of that answer. So I was part of starting Wikifactory when I already lived in China. So that was not the reason why I went to China. I came to China because of the book that I wrote called The Ethical Economy, which brought me to China originally. And then while I was in China, I co-founded then Wikifactory. But of course, it makes sense to do it in China because China is the manufacturing base of the world, right? So it happens to make sense to be in China, but it's not the reason why I came personally to China.
So we understand that from a purely theoretical point of view, it's good to be in China because it's a factory of the world. 50% of the vendors on Amazon are from China, for instance, as a metric. But it's easy to understand with the machine of exploitation that China is, that is a factory of the world. But it's a very difficult place to manage a global business from. You need a VPN to get access to Google, to some social media, and so on. So what is good to do in China in your business, and what is not good?
So it's absolutely correct what you started off saying. So my co-founders were with me, moved to Chengdu in the beginning when we started Wikifactory, but they actually had to move back to Europe because of the VPN and the internet was too slow, right? Because when you are a software developer, you're very reliant on Slack, for example, right? On GitHub, and it just made it too slow to be productive. So they actually moved back to Europe. So our main team sits in Madrid, in Spain, and do the development. So that is a problem. But on the positive side, for us, it is also a key value proposition. What Wikifactory is trying to solve is the connection between China and the rest of the world, right? Because we have started Wikifactory not only based from China, but also with China in mind from the beginning, where a lot of companies, they have a solution that they've developed internationally, and then they want to enter China and market it, or vice versa. And that often makes it very difficult. Whereas we, from the beginning, also in terms of the government, they are very aware of what we're doing, and they know the social vision in Wikifactory, and been supportive from the beginning. So in that sense, we are already a local, being seen as a quasi-local company, not just a foreign company coming to China. And what we're trying to crack between China and the West is that you are able to do the whole the science production between China and the West in a seamless manner, right? Just on through online measures, and that will be quite a disruption compared to how that works today.
Yeah, I feel that actually the timing for you is playing in your favor, because China, over the last 5 years, I would say, has implemented the Chinese factories, sorry, not China as a country, but the Chinese factories have implemented more and more design offices in their factory.
Yes.
And I feel that without that, it would have been difficult for you to connect with them. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, there are many trends in China that so of course it's not like by chance. I mean, it's also by choice. Our timing about Wikifactory, because it is the right timing also in China. So one is this that you mentioned, design offices in manufacturers. The other thing that the Chinese manufacturers are doing is upgrading, right? They're becoming more intelligent manufacturing. So applying the robots, the 3D printing, the CNC, all this that we need for a distributed production system. So that's happening already in China. And then thirdly, what they're doing is creating a online presence. A lot of the big manufacturers are now creating, you could say, online order systems. And then they organize their supply chain. There are 250 suppliers, behind the online page they have for orders. So they're like moving into a more like internet-based model than before. It's very simple still, but for us it's perfect that they organize their supply chain themselves and have an order system online, because that makes it easier for us just to connect and integrate with their order system, and therefore there are 250 suppliers behind them.
I understand it's easier, but there is no standard yet, right? There is no standard, like one standard to connect all the factories. It's still one by one, right?
No.
There's no API, right, for instance?
No, but there's a lot. I mean, so there's two things. One is that the players, the bigger players themselves, are organizing their supply chains themselves. So we don't have to, you say, worry about that. They take the general contract, so to speak, right? For making a product that requires different suppliers. But there's also a huge development in terms of sensors, creating sensors and software for the production in China. So we are working with different software providers in China that already are connecting like thousands of CNC machines through sensors and through their software, and they provide an API that we can link to.
Interesting. For the production, they provide an API.
Yeah.
Could you exemplify a little bit?
And also the steps before the production, right? So you can simulate the production before you start producing, right? So they will have the software where you can say, okay, what level of quality do you need, right? Okay, this is the level of quality. You simulate your design and you make it ready for production, and then when it's right to be produced at the quality you want, it can go directly to the CNC and start being produced.
So would you mind explaining what is CNC?
So CNC is like CNC is like a cutting. Where, I mean, as I mentioned before, the casing, for example, of a laptop, right, or of your mobile, is done by a CNC machine. So it either has 3 axes or 5 axes that can shape any type of materials, whether it's materials that a laptop casing needs. Then it cuts it the way that you need for laptop casing, for example.
Is CNC a kind of 3D printing?
It is what you call digital fabrication, yeah. So it's so the difference is that CNC is what you call subtractive. So it cuts, right? Whereas what you normally call 3D printing is layers, right? That's prints on layers, right? So, but they're part of the same, you could say, revolution of what you call digital fabrication, right? So some cuts, some builds, right, put layers on, some does it through laser and etc. But they're all part of digital fabrication.
We are entering the last 15 minutes, and I like to open up the discussion to bigger topics, more economic topics. And you have been working as a researcher in economy for the central bank, right, in Europe, and also at JP Morgan. We can see that capitalism is changing with the sharing economy. With the fact that you can put all your data online, you can put your plan online. You are sharing to build a product, but you don't care about the IP and making money out of the IP. How do you feel it's sustainable Do you think it's a major change in capitalism, or do you think it's actually someone who's going to take advantage of it?
Well, so with every change in model, socioeconomic model, it all depends on what you call the iron cage. So that's a theory by Max Weber, a sociologist, that said that any system becomes institutionalized, through the corporate or the commercial laws, through regulation, right, through the monetary system, etc. Right? So we are seeing a change in the socioeconomic model away from the neoliberal model to a model which is much more open and collaborative. But for that system to actually become the main part of our economy, it needs to be institutionalized, right? Which means, for example, the intellectual property laws, regulation needs to change, right, for a new system to emerge. So yes, we are seeing a change, and we have many success stories for the new model. But the point is, for that to become the model that this society and the economy is operated under, it requires political intervention, requires changes in the intellectual property rights system, requires changes in the monetary system, and etc.
What would be one change?
But yeah.
What would be one change would make it possible to share your invention, but still making a profit or getting a benefit from it?
Yes. So there are different. So let's talk about intellectual property rights a little bit. So first, to explain why it's going to be difficult to uphold in the future. So, for example, smartphones are soon all going to have 3D in-depth scanning devices, right? So 5 billion people would be able to scan anything. The cup that you mentioned before, right? Scan. Okay, so I like this cup, so I'll scan it, and then, for example, you can upload it on Wikifactory or some other platform. Right, and then we will have the 3D, a design of this cup, and then in somewhere in. Hello, yeah. Sorry, did you hear me?
Talking, yeah.
So then you can send it to any machine around the world and get it made. So when 5 billion people would be able to basically copy anything and send it. And send it to anywhere and get it made, then IP is going to be very difficult. So we're looking at different models for the future. One is of course using blockchain, right? So when you have a more open collaborative system, for example, Wikifactory, we know who has uploaded the initial design, right? We know who have contributed. We know who have been downloading it, and who have been making it, and etc. So you can start imagining a much more open and dynamic IP model, where when revenues come through, let's say our system, we can distribute those proceeds to those who have contributed, right, to the collaboration, right? So it's not that it's one person who is assigned the IP, but it's a community of contributors, right?
I see.
That gets allocated. Then of course the other way is what happened in the music industry, right? So it's through subscription, right? So you don't really. It's not about like the individual song as such, right? It's more that consumers in the future in the production industry, they're going to subscribe to a platform and have access to a library of product designs. So imagine this more like an IKEA of the 21st century, right? So you want a table at home, but you want it maybe in different dimensions, right? So it's very easy because it's a file, so you can just change it to the dimension you want. And then you get it made and sent to you. But what you're paying for is more subscription to these to a library of designs. And then the money that, let's say, Wikifactory gathers will go to the downloads, right? So somebody downloads the design of this table, right? And then whoever gets the most download gets the bigger part of the revenues, right? So there'll be new models like emerging also in this industry, a bit like what happened in the music industry. And then thirdly, we're actually doing an experiment right now in China, where we've invited 10 international furniture designers to provide their designs open source to Chinese manufacturers, but then we protect their brand, their logo. So, which means that and through QR codes, we know, okay, this batch of furniture is from this designer and has the logo and the name of the designer. Then the Chinese manufacturer can copy and make the same furniture. They can innovate on it, change it, whatever they want, right? So you keep the innovation happening on the product level. But from the consumer level, they want to know that, okay, this is from this famous designer, or this is from this international product development company. So that's what they're paying for. They're paying for the intangible value and not the tangible value, right, of the product, right?
Yeah, and to ensure the product is actually well done and the material is good and not actually cheating on the material. Brand is a protection and a promise, right?
Yeah. So because you cannot copy the designer, right, himself, right, but you can copy the product, right? So that's what we're trying to say. Okay, let's forget about protecting the product itself. Let that stay open source and anyone can do. But then have a tight control regarding the batches that comes from that specific, that have the brand and the logo of that designer, right? And that's where the margins come, right? Because margins on products and hardware is very low, right? But the margins on the intangibles, the brand value is high, right? So it makes more sense to do that.
Bernard Arnault was saying, I'm working in luxury because this is the only industry where you have luxury margin, and basically that's the brand which is making the margin. Another topic I'd like to talk about, it's more linked to your past experience, but that brought you to China, is ethical rating. So how, as far as I understood, you worked on how ethics can be taken into consideration to invest or to make an economic decision, if I'm correct. How does it speak to China? Because China has been very developing fast. People have earned a lot of money quickly. I mean, some of them, and actually, as a country, the development went fast. It has been a very materialistic development. So ethics has not been a key metrics tracked so far, I believe, in investment in China. So how does your research speak to China?
Well, so let me just point out that when we call it ethics here, or ethical economy, which is what the book is called, it's not about having one set of ethical principles, right? It's more a dynamic system of value, of values, right? So how can you? So basically, in any economy, there are three main questions you need to answer for any model behind an economy. One is how is value being created, and who decides what has value, right? So because what has value to you and to me is different. So who actually decides that? Because that's what's being priced. And then thirdly is how is that value being shared? So who benefits, right? That's the three fundamental questions that any economy, any society needs to answer. And the ethical economy model is that on all these three levels, the value creation, the value setting, and the value sharing is an open deliberation process where people, you could say, are included. So open innovation, right? In terms of setting what has value, is including in for example what we call general sentiment. So that's the rating. So what is so unique, in the history right now, is that for the first time in history, we actually know what people value, right? Before it will always be analysts, right? If you go all the way back, it will be the church, right?
So you meaning we know people what people value is the number of likes and what they follow.
Exactly. So through the likes, through the comments, etc., and then you have like sentiment crawlers, right? So you can measure, right, what is the general sentiment around a brand or around a product and etc. Right? So for the first time in history, we actually know what people value, and that is a valuation. That's a pricing mechanism, because if you choose an Airbnb flat, you probably look at the rating and you look at the comments, right? So it's not about price as such, but it's about the general sentiment around the general valuation of people around that product, right? So suddenly, and that's what we call ethical economy, that suddenly the general sentiment of people is allocating resources, is making people making purchasing decisions, based on it. And then the question is, how can you do this so it becomes a system? So the financial system is based on this, for example, right? So how can the financial system also start to allocate resources based on general sentiment rather than on a few financial analysts deciding that this asset is a good one, right? And this is what China kind of liked in the ideas. Because China always likes to experiment with different models, right? So there's the famous quote that you know from Deng Xiaoping, right? That he doesn't care about the color of the cat as long as it catches mice, right? It means it doesn't really matter what the system is, what the ideology is, as long as you can lift poverty, you can create jobs, you can do, have the actual impact. So that's why I was invited to China, was to say, okay, maybe this ethical economy model can solve some of the issues that we have in China with all the environmental issues, the social issues, so all the other values, right, than pure GDP growth, right? So it's a system that can balance these things in a different way. So that was why they found interest in it.
And before we started the recording, you talked about the social credit system, but you have not used the word. How does it link to your work?
Yeah, so in the book we're using this, as I mentioned before, the term general sentiment, which captures what people like, so to speak, value. And it's interesting. So the first manuscript of this book was done 15 years ago, before we had all these likes and etc. Right? And our thinking back then was more like a peer-to-peer based system, where you'll be able to allocate resources based on general sentiment. But so what's interesting for me is that the Chinese government has implemented, you could call a type of general sentiment model with a social credit score. And this is the first, you could say, government or attempt in the world to do a general sentiment system. Of course, the way that China has done it is not how we envisioned it in China. It's more top-down, meaning that they have already set what is the value in the system. Where in our system is this about, again, having open valuation. So so it's more people decide what has value to them. And that's what they're being measured on, right? Rather than it's being set by a few people, right? So that's the difference, but it's still a very interesting development, and I think it's the right development. I'm not saying that the approach they have used is the correct one. But I think that the general sentiment model is going to be the model for the future in any case, because it means that it's not just about economic growth. It's also about whether you have about social like inequalities. It's about the environment, right? It's about other values than pure economic growth. So a measurement that captures all these different values into one score is more balanced than having just one parameter like GDP growth.
Understood. we are close to the end of the interview. But one of the questions which is raising to me, if I like a video on Facebook of someone crying, maybe I like the fact that this person actually is crying but fighting for something, or maybe I like the fact that because this person is crying because I don't like her. That's why I like it. So basically, there's still a lot of interpretation, even though you have the factual element that I like it. So I believe there is still a lot of technology to implement to make sure that you know what you like when you actually like on Facebook or like on WeChat.
Yeah, but for sure. But two things. One is that in our model, right, is that how things are being valued, right? So what is being priced in the system is open, right? So it's kind of like, everyone can go in. It's an open public deliberation dialogue, right? Saying, okay, what is important to me and you? So everyone is part of setting the value of the system, right? So you have you can impact, things. And the other thing is, all systems have problems, right? So would you rather have 30 financial analysts at the 10 biggest hedge funds in the world, basically deciding employment and social developments in your national country, compared to actually having a democratic, inclusive dialogue about what is being valued and how to allocate that value to people, right? So of course it's not mature now, because you say it's difficult to assess whether a like is meant as positive or can be positive to something negative or what have you, right? But when we're talking big data, right, across millions, if not billions of people, it will probably be a good estimate of a general sentiment. It might not reflect your specific sentiment there, but across a million people doing it, it will be a good approximate. So it's at least worth. So our point is, I guess, it's at least worth to try out, because it's. I rather have a evaluation system where people can get involved than having a system where a few analysts decides on behalf of us, right? So.
Thank you. We didn't go through the last questions I usually plan, because actually we had enough to discuss. So thank you for the time. It's already been 1 hour. Very interesting. Congratulations for everything you have achieved with Wikifactory. I'm surprised the name was available. Wikifactory, such a good name. How did you get the wikifactory.com? Did you pay a lot for that?
No. It was. I guess we were the first one thinking about linking those two.
So congrats for everything. And
we actually had. And actually, we actually just had a summit in Copenhagen 2 weeks ago, and we had Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, there, and he also had no problems with us using this name.
and I enjoyed very much talking to you, talking to entrepreneurs who want to change the world, who have a big plan, and we are making it step by step, in a strategic and a tactical way to reach a bigger goal. It's always very interesting to listen to. So thank you very much for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed the talk. I did. Bye everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.